How's it going, y'all? It's your boy Raymond back up in here with another film review, and today we're going to be talking about another new film that just came out recently before the end of the year, and it's Queer. This is the newest film from director Luca Guadagnino. You may know him from films such as Suspiria, Call Me By Your Name, as well as, the biggest film of this year so far, Challengers. And of course, you may be thinking, well, this is already like the second film to come out from Luca this year, and you would be correct. This is the already the second film that Luca has already put out. I don't know how that is even like possible at this rate, but yeah, this is like the second film from Luca this year, and is only going to be generating more Oscar buzz as time goes on here. Not only is this the second film of his to come out this year that he's directed, but it's also the second film that he's collaborated now with Justin Kurwitzkis. I believe I'm pronouncing that right, Justin Kurwitzkis. It is also the second film that he's now made with Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross doing the soundtrack. So to say that there was like a lot of hype for this movie coming out, and to say that I was excited about this film after Challengers was like an understatement. Honestly, at this point, I could see that collaboration doing no wrong, and I was super excited to see what was going on. I heard that Daniel Craig was cast in it, and I was just super excited to see what was going to happen with the film. And then another added interest that got thrown in as I did a little bit more research on the film was to know that Queer is actually an adaptation based off of the book Queer by William S. Burroughs. And if anybody knows about Burroughs, you know that he wrote the book Naked Lunch, and obviously David Cronenberg adapted that back in, I believe it was like the early 90s. I've seen Naked Lunch and I was a huge fan of it, and I love David Cronenberg in general. So I was super excited to see another sort of Burroughs adaptation put to screen, and especially in the style that Luca was doing it, and to see Daniel Craig sort of taking over this role. I was super excited, and it looked like the pieces were really coming together before the movie even came out. And upon first viewing, I can definitely say that Queer still falls into those lines of the kind of nostalgic, the sort of old-timey film noir aesthetics, but dipped in acid, with a lot of these characters and a lot of like the world building feeling very surreal. A lot of these elements that are a lot more abstract that are put into his writing and his stories. And it can put a lot of the characters in sort of this space that feels like a pocket of time that never truly existed, even though it feels almost kind of familiar for us. And I think the world building both in Queer and also in Naked Lunch do a very good job of sort of portraying the story and building the world around these unusual characters. And of course, we have Daniel Craig, who plays our main character, William Lee, an expat living in 1950s Mexico City. He's a very jaded and hardened man, and the opening credits sort of show the apartment that he lives in essentially has a bunch of his scattered belongings and a lot of these letters that he has written just sort of strewn across his room. And I think that sort of opening credit sequence is really like one of the key sort of openings of the entire film, and sort of gives you like a hint of what this character could be, and sort of gives you like an insight into who he is, and just a little bit adds to like the mystery of his character. I think we learn fairly quickly through like the opening scene that he is sort of struggling with sort of finding another man that he can sort of grow attached to and that he can fall in love with. And he's sort of struggling in Mexico City really to find somebody that can match him on his level, and that he really wants to find somebody to settle down with. And he's tired of sort of sleeping around with all of these different men and just wants somebody to settle down with. That mixed with the drugs that he's been doing, the hard drugs, and just, going to bars and day drinking and a lot of these different aspects all sort of see him sort of spiraling down a hole, and doesn't really see any sort of way of him coming out. But at the same time, he is still looking for that person that maybe could bring him some solace and maybe could pull him out of the hole that he's in right now. And we really see sort of like the first glimpse of how he reacts in a lot of these sort of relationships when he has the one night stand with Omar Apollo's character in like the first 20 minutes. Surprisingly, there was like a promo like music video or like a promo song that was released with him and also Trent and Atticus. But that's not like in the film, which I was slightly surprised by. I was sort of expecting that to be like a big reveal sort of once we got to his character, but it doesn't actually happen like in the film itself. We just kind of like meet his character at a bar, and then they have like the one night stand, this very sort of awkward but also very like sensual encounter where they both have sex in like this hotel room that Lee decides to rent essentially for the night. And there's a lot of these different kinds of colors and these different sort of surrealist aspects of the scene that take place. Like, you know, the neon lights outside are reflecting into the hotel. The colors are very bright. There's a lot of red in this scene as well, which I think is a really nice touch visually. And there's just like a lot going on sort of in this setup, but we're still sort of left with a little bit of the mystery of his character as we move forward. And of course, after this, Leah basically just pays him, and essentially it was just like a paid one night stand. And then his character just leaves Lee there in the hotel and essentially just alone, as if nothing had ever really happened. Eventually, though, you know, as he's going through his day to day, there's a new boy on the block, I guess you could say, and that is Drew Starkey's character, Eugene. This sort of sparks this immediate like flash of emotion in him, and he sort of, he falls in love by first sight and essentially just sees him at the bar with what is, I assume, to be like his girlfriend or his wife maybe, or partner of some sort, but a woman nonetheless with him as they are in the bar. But there are definitely these sort of moments where Lee's character can essentially see through him and sees him as somebody that he has to end up sleeping with or be with, whether or not he is officially gay or is coming out or has come out in that sort of sense. And so that becomes sort of his next target that he tries to go after. And so there's a bit of this cat and mouse game for a portion of the film where he is trying to get with him and eventually gets the courage to actually go up and ask him out and see if he wants to hang out and whatnot. And that eventually leads to them sleeping together at some point in the film. I actually think like that portion of the film is actually handled really well. Their sex scene is very long, but it also feels like it's like comfortable at the same time. It's very intimate, but it also feels almost kind of awkward and natural in a certain aspect of it. I don't think it's almost like heartbreaking because it seems like Lee has never really had this sort of passion and this sort of sensuality before with another partner. And so to see that come to life and these bodily reactions that he gets during this whole portion of the scene with Eugene, I think is super interesting and really adds to the effect that Eugene has on him as the film goes on. And so from this point, you know, it's still sort of like a cat and mouse game, and Lee is trying to sort of grow some sort of bond with him, but Eugene is still sort of in the phase where he's not fully committed to Lee, and he still is trying to retain some sort of normalcy while sort of staying in the closet, I guess you could say. And it's a really interesting sort of juxtaposition of him. You know, here's like this, Lee is obviously an older man, and he's trying to chase down after Eugene, who is obviously a lot younger, but is still married and is trying to not only attach himself to Eugene, but also form some sort of bond enough so that he can pull Eugene out of the closet and just be with him no matter at what cost. And obviously, because there is this back and forth, Lee obviously struggles with not being able to have Eugene with him at every point in time. And so we really get this sort of a lot of this back and forth. There's more of like a spiral down into his hole, and there's like a very long scene of him shooting up and doing meth. And there's just, the film has like a very sort of depressed tone about it, about this man. But it's played to see in some sort of way that, you know, he really just wants sort of the affection, and he wants to be loved and doesn't know how to express that properly. And there is sort of this idea of this whole thing is like one giant escape from him, because obviously he is an expat. He has moved to Mexico City, where things are a lot more free at this time. And he's just looking for some sort of escape while also just wanting to be loved and just wanting to find somebody. that he can go through life with permanently, instead of just having all of these one night stands. And so eventually they end up taking a vacation trip together, but Lee gets sick at some point, and so they go to a doctor, and Eugene forces him to go to this doctor, and they talk about it, and it is essentially assumed that he could have an illness. And so from that point on, it's sort of trying to figure out ways that Lee can be cured, and they hear of this plant, I think down in like South Africa or something, that they have to go chase down, and it's like this healing plant that these like Russian doctors are using or something like that. It has like this sort of ominous presence about it whenever they hear about this plant that could heal them. They decide to eventually go chase it down. And this is sort of the point in the film where, as I was doing some more research, I realized that Burroughs hadn't actually finished the book before he passed away. And so the book is technically incomplete. And so according to the research that I did, the book actually ends before they actually go to the jungle to find the plant. But Luca said that he wanted to have that portion of the film play out. You essentially get like the last half of the film as them going to the jungle, them having these really surrealist and these really crazy abstract moments that they go through together after they take this plant, and they get these hallucinogenic visions of each other. And there's even like a choreographed dance where the two of them are like becoming one, and their bodies are kind of morphing into each other. There's another moment when they initially take the drug where they essentially vomit up their own hearts, which I think was rather, on the nose. Yeah, the last half of the film is very abstract and very surreal. And then we're essentially left at the very end with this reveal of present day, where Lee is an older man and he's lost a lot of his memory. And it's essentially implied that everything that we've seen in the film is him trying to reflect on his past, and the sequences of the film are essentially just like loose memories that he's had that have all been strung together, and then the film essentially just ends from there. And so then that's kind of just like the entire experience of the film. It's very different, obviously, from Challengers, but it definitely still is a Luca film, and it definitely still keeps with that sort of vibe, the crazy camera movements, the styling, the style of acting. It's all definitely there, but I just think, unfortunately, there's sort of a lot left on the table that I think could have been explored here, and I'll sort of get into that. I think the main struggle about this story is that it is unfortunately adapted from something that was unfinished, and you don't really get like a good sense of everybody's specific character other than maybe Lee's, but I think even then nothing ever really feels like it's resolved. You kind of just go along the first half of the film, which is really the story and the character driven stuff, and a lot of the stuff that takes place between the ensemble. But then for like the last half, it's really a lot of these surrealist abstract moments, which visually seem very interesting, and I guess conceptually are interesting, but I just don't think that it really does a whole lot for the story and doesn't really flesh it out. And so he essentially like finished the story on his own. And so I think that's why it feels so loosely connected kind of in like the last portion to the first half. And I'm not quite sure how you would necessarily go about fixing that. Like, obviously, Luca wanted to keep to the book, and this was really his passion project since the first time he read it when he was like 14 or something. So I don't know exactly how you would go about sort of fixing a lot of those things. I think it could have just been stronger from like a character and writing standpoint. I understand that Justin Kurwitzkis obviously wrote the script for this one as well. I think just like the differences between like trying to adapt something for like the screen, especially when you're adapting a book that is technically like unfinished, I think it's a bit of a challenge, and I think it just didn't really quite work for me here for some portions. And I would have liked it to be a lot more fleshed out if Luca really did want to finish the book that badly and take this trip to the jungle. I think it would have been more interesting to try and flesh out the dynamics between Lee and between Eugene so that we could try to understand their characters a bit more. But everything just seems to be like a catalyst for Lee's character. So you don't really get a whole lot of dynamics between everybody else. It's really just everything is driving Lee's character forward. And that's sort of the entire concept, because it really just feels like a collection of loose memories that are attempting to be strung together by this narrative that this person has passed away and is remembering all of this stuff on his very last moments. And, I guess for that, I guess that's fine. But for me, I would have just liked a little bit more. Visually, I think it's really gorgeously shot. I think with the budget that they had, it looks really incredible. And I think the performances are quite good. This is a very unusual Daniel Craig role as well, and I think he tackled it in a really interesting way. And I think he really put his all into it as well. Drew Starkey, I think, is really good with what he's given to work with. I would have liked a little bit more with him in this idea that, he's still kind of in the closet, and it seems like he has like a wife or like a girlfriend or something at the beginning of the film, but that's not ever really resolved. So I think I would have liked a little bit more of that aspect of it as well. This idea that he wants to be with people so badly that he will drive wedges in people's relationships or whatever to be with them. So yeah, I guess those are just like my main issues with it, really. I think the pieces that are there that I do enjoy, I think do outweigh the things that I don't necessarily like. And so I think for this film, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. Do think I would like to rewatch it just to sort of get like a little bit more of a grasp for the last half with a lot of the surrealist, abstract elements of the whole thing. But even upon first viewing, it just feels like there's not a whole lot there for me to really grasp onto and to necessarily come back to, but there are things that I am curious about between the character dynamics that maybe I could have missed upon the first viewing, that I am interested in exploring more of. But overall, yeah, those are just like my thoughts behind it. I think overall I still enjoyed it. I just would have liked a bit more from the story and from the writing of it. But other than that, I think it's a gorgeous film. I think it has some really great performances in it, and I'm sure it'll get a lot of Oscar buzz as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. I know this took a while to come out as well. I watched this movie like a month ago, I think now. So it's been a little while, but I do plan on obviously talking about more. I just recently saw A Complete Unknown a couple days ago, and I need to do a video on that before Christmas. I'm going to be seeing The Brutalist as well coming up soon, so there's going to be a lot coming out this weekend, hopefully, that I can get on top of. Still got to do the Kendrick video, although I might just save talking about that album for my top 10 video that's going to be coming out. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens, but be sure to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you guys can keep up. Obviously going to keep posting more stuff over the course of the next week here so that I can just get everything out before the end of the year. And yeah, so be sure to stay tuned for that. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it, and I will see you guys in the next video.